I think we will bring this discussion. I think it's a very new perspective and very nice to have you all here. We were able to gather, I would say, not only important experts in this area, but with a diversity of approaches. And we'll be dealing, especially with this new program we are setting up, we call Blue One Health. Actually, this is something that One Health you probably are familiar with. It's been a major reference for many areas that the WHO, the G20, many in Brazil, we have set up an interministerial area for dealing with One Health. Even now in COP, One Health is one of the main questions that will be discussed. And on the other side, we have the ocean, which is so relevant in many, many aspects, and we will see this in the presentations. But in the ocean also, we dealt with the idea of health and oceans. But usually this was more connected with a separation between how health affects human or animal or ecosystem health. And this bringing together these two main streams in shaping this idea of connecting them with this Blue One Health perspective, we are trying to make the synergies in a way that we could think not only in the very strict idea of connecting these different aspects of a human ecosystems and animal, but thinking of a human health also in terms of many questions related to vulnerabilities of the people who live in the coastal areas and really people who are affected by the ocean, and this involves everybody. So we'll have this session. I want to take more time just to take advantage of our speakers and have some time for discussion. Our first speaker will be Alexander Turra. Turra is UNESCO Chair on Ocean Sustainability and professor at the University of São Paulo. And he brings a pioneering vision exactly on Blue One Health. Turra was one of the persons who started this and coined this idea of Blue One Health together with other people who are here, Moutinho and others. And he also, so he is the chair of the UNESCO, the chair of the University of São Paulo. And he also, as I mentioned in other session, was one of the main leaders of the O20. O20 was the initiative of the oceans for the G20. And now Turra is also involved in bringing the ocean question to the COP30. So I think he has a strong experience. He's one of the persons that in Brazil is one of the leaders of this and experts on the oceans. And I think you have 10 to 15 minutes. What I will do is call you to present from here. I will go there to see and then I will be moving to next. And I hope we have 5 speakers, but I hope to still have time for some discussion with you. Okay? I will control your time.
Okay. Should I use the mic? No. Only for questions. Okay. So you can hear me? Yes? Excellent. Thank you, Paulo, for the introduction. Behind me is not the ocean, it's an aquarium in countryside of Brazil. It's a freshwater aquarium, but it seems the ocean. Yeah, we are here because of this guy, Zé Moutinho, which provoked us to think about that, Paulo? With Carla and other colleagues, to think about what Blue One Health means, what's that, and how can we work on it. And then I started to bring some ideas together to create some kind of framework where this team settles. And that's my presentation. Okay? Um, so, we are talking about One Health, and One Health is a very established concept that unifies or unites different aspects of health regarding the ocean or the environment, animals, and people. So we are trying to integrate different aspects or different compartments into a single idea, single connected idea. Noah started to bring the ocean to this discussion and started to exercise how to think about one ocean, One Health regarding ocean issues. And then we have this advancement in the way we understand One Health considering the ocean. This evolved because we started to understand that the ocean is everywhere. And then, as yesterday I said, just look around. The ocean is everywhere. We are wearing the ocean. We are sitting on the ocean. We are breathing the ocean. We are feeding the ocean. And we are being fed by the ocean. So we think we need to have this in mind, because when we think in connected systems, we need to understand that the ocean is a very important and interlinked compartment with the other ones, including us, into a very complex social ecological system. So considering that, we are not able to think or to consider the parts alone. We need to integrate and have and promote a systemic thinking. But the ocean also heals us. This white paper or blue paper, in fact, was published last year by the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy in the Barcelona conference of the Ocean Decade. And it shows how the ocean can heal us, with good food, with in terms of psychology, physical health, and other things. Good air, in terms of air quality, and leisure, and other tourism, and other things that brings us happiness and have spiritual things. Yeah, sure. And then this picture shows us the transversality of the ocean regarding the other SDGs. So they are all connected. The ocean is everywhere. The ocean is influenced by some SDGs and influence a lot of them. So it's important to have this in mind, not because the ocean is the most important thing in the world. Yeah, it is, but we need to understand how we connect with the ocean. And that said, I always ask people about my preferred SDG. And normally people say 14. And I say no. Because the most important one, in my opinion, is 17. Connections. What we are doing right now. Connections, partnerships to implement the SDGs. And the ocean is the second one. Okay, it's there. So the ocean is a transformative agent of society. We need to keep it into our minds and work it in a practical way. And so when we talk about ocean health, what we are talking about? We are talking about the fever of the ocean, the diabetes of the ocean. What we are talking about? This comic book we published recently in Brazil started to exercise this with a very broad public, non-specialized public. So we are talking about pollution. We are talking about overfishing, climate changes, invasive species, the deforestation of mangroves. We are talking about a lot of things, microplastics. And then there is a big challenge to integrate all of these threats into indices like this, the Ocean Health Index, that helps us to think about how healthy or unhealthy the ocean is. This index was proposed in 2012 and integrated two important things. One is quality of the ocean, so clean waters, biodiversity, and the other one is usability of the ocean. If it's being used, if the benefits the ocean offers to society is being used, like tourism, like fisheries, like sense of place. So if you connect both, you have a clean environment, a healthy environment, a clean environment, and a used environment, you have a healthy ocean in terms of the Ocean Health Index. It's a concept. There is some criticism on it, but it's a nice way to think about ocean health. Okay. This is Brazil. Brazil is 60 out of 100. It's not so bad, but it's not so good too. Huh? But the most important thing is not to compare Brazil with Argentina, because we always do that in terms of soccer, in terms of football, yeah. But talking about how Brazil can progress over time. So how can we get to 70 or 80? And the way to do that is to look where we are not performing well, like tourism and recreation. We need to push that. Like fisheries, we need to control fisheries because there is overfishing. We need to promote mariculture. We need to promote natural products or bioeconomy, biotechnology, things like that. And then we can expand this radar graph, that picture, to the extreme, so that we... Okay, isso é 3 minutos. Tá. Okay, and then we can perform. Yeah. So this is to overcome the planetary crisis of climate, biodiversity, pollution, and poverty that we have, and prevent to cross the planetary boundaries. These are 9 planetary boundaries that we have now. One, for example, is novel entities related to microplastics, for example. And then this shows how the planetary boundaries are evolving since 2009. And we have now more boundaries, 9 boundaries, 6 are crossed. So this also relates to ocean health and the concept of One Health. And then we can incorporate these aspects into indices that can be useful for us.
I made a mistake. We have 5 minutes more.
Okay, thank you. We have crossed ocean acidification this year. There's a paper based on 2020, so we crossed ocean acidification too. So these are aspects that we can consider, like what's the fever of the ocean? Huh? What's the diabetes? So we are talking about radiative forcing or CO2 concentration related to climate change, or freshwater change, or land system change. We are changing things in a way that we cannot recover. No? We are crossing the tipping points. So this defines a wicked problem. So when we talk about Blue One Health, we are talking about a wicked problem or a very complex issue that needs to be understood. And sometimes it's not easy to understand, most of the times. We need to look at not try to simplify things to understand better, but then come back and connect it to the complexity that's out there. So it's important, and the guys inside the box are us, normally working in a disciplinary way. But we need to move forward and become inter and transdisciplinary to shape the future of the world. And then there are several ways to do that. Have you seen these movies? No? Yeah, I like them.
You're old.
Yeah. These are the first one, because they are the new one. Right? Yeah. But the future should be built, constructed based on principles, goals, and tools. And this is a sociological construction. What are the principles? What are the goals? What are the tools that we have? And then we need to understand that in the future, considering the framework, the Nature Futures framework of IPBS, which is the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, we have the idea of nature for society. The benefits of nature for people are here. But we also have nature as culture. So there is no dependence, no service. And we have nature for nature. This is a philosophical issue. Nature has its own rights that doesn't depend on us. And then we also have this idea of living in harmony with nature, which is a very important concept proposed by the CBD, to integrate better the society with nature, including the ocean. And this was captured in the SDGs, in the UN Agenda 2030 Agenda, so that we have all these connected, including the ocean. But up to 2017, we didn't have a clear idea, a global clear idea of what would be the ocean of the future, or the desired future of the ocean. And then this came up based on a very broad discussion. So now we know, as humankind, that we want to have a clean ocean, a healthy and resilient ocean, a productive ocean, a predictable, safe ocean, an accessible ocean in terms of information, and an inspiring and engaging ocean. And this may mean something relevant in terms of the big concept of Blue One Health. So there are several challenges related to the ocean decade, and to promote this big pathway to the future, considering a sustainable ocean economy which is dependent of the health of the ocean, we need to protect the ocean effectively, produce sustainability in a sustainable way, and prosper in an equitable way, in an integrated way. So everything is integrated in a way that we need to exercise this systemic, this complex thinking that is captured in this picture proposed by the International Panel for Ocean Sustainability, integrating society, science, private sector, policy, in a very clear theory of change, co-producing knowledge and advancing, integrating all relevant aspects that need to be integrated. In the end, this was produced by Martin Wiesbeck, trying to connect science and society, considering the ocean and all aspects related to the ocean. So the main message here, and I'm finalizing, is that we need to capture the complexity of the systems and propose a kind of strategy to construct transdisciplinary approaches in a way that we bring science or different systems of knowledge, like the scientific one and the traditional one, together with decision makers, society, and other stakeholders that have a stake in the discussion of the ocean in a planetary context. That said, it's important that we capture and restore our relationship with nature, with the ocean, in a way we understand our role in this complex system and our role in changing it and shaping the futures. I will finish now, so in the interest of time, so that we can keep going into the discussions, okay? So keep the ocean with you. Be the ocean with you.
Very nice, Torra, and I think it's very important to connect with the 2030 agenda. At Fiocruz, we have One Health as one of the main areas of work, but we always connect this to the 2030 agenda, because it gives a broader scope, and it gives meaningful in terms of the values and what the SDGs brings. And this we do also in terms of the climate change. And it was very important also to think of the Ocean Health Index and bring this different perspective of nature's right, society, and the other one, which is the culture. Culture. Yeah. Okay. As I said, we have a very diverse perspectives here, and we'll move to. And we have, if we have time in the discussion, you could bring some information about how you're dealing with the ocean question in the COP. I think people would be interested in this. Now we have Dr. Wayne de Crave. He's a coordinator program for technology and development of health products and the FIOANTA initiative from Fiocruz, which represents our engagement in Antarctic research and planetary health. Dr. Wynn will highlight how polar marine ecosystems contribute to global climate regulation and human health, with a focus on innovation and scientific diplomacy.
Good morning. Thanks everybody for the contribution and presence. So I'll talk a little bit on different aspects of ocean research and also Antarctic research. Ocean health and marine conservation. Blue One Health is an important concept. The ocean has obviously different ecosystems like the deep sea, seamounts, atolls and islands, which are a different ecosystem. Coastal areas and rivers and estuaries, because we have to consider also the interplay of sweetwater sources and interplay with the ocean. Obviously, we have to consider the impacted populations, which is not only who are living on the in the coastal areas. It's not only people who eat fish or have other benefits from ocean, but also more than 50% of the world population lives within 3 kilometers of a water body or the ocean. So this is a surprising figure, but it's really important that we consider how the human culture and nature interacts with the water bodies and the ocean. Obviously, it's also important for food production and the world health as a whole. So the ocean is 70% of the Earth's surface, 95% of the biosphere, actually, surprisingly. A lot of heat storage and carbon dioxide absorption goes through the ocean. So the ocean has much more importance to climate and survival of the Earth than we would say at first look. Blue One Health concept: human health, animal health, and ecosystem health. It's a relatively simple concept as such, but we should consider the standard that if we would give equal rights to human, to animal, and to nature, this has very important impacts on our lives and on our activities. Also, there shouldn't be any doubt that our current economic model, 5% average growth per year, growth of world population, is absolutely incompatible with ocean health or Blue One Health or One Health as such. So we have to do much more than just preservation. We have to change the way we think about environment and about our food sources. And we have to find, obviously, very different equilibriums than we have currently. There are lots of threats to the ocean by itself due to warming, acidification, also a lot of zoonosis and pandemic risks. I will show a little bit about that during the talk. And ecosystem disruption has a very profound impact, even although we don't feel that way, or we don't see that, or we don't consider it as such, but the impact obviously on human society is very large. Brazil has a specific, I work at Fiocruz in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, so we try to define and discuss strategies of Brazil for the ocean, as we have a very large coastline, lots of millions of people that live in coastal areas and depend on marine resources. And also we try to mobilize scientific research on ocean studies to contribute with different aspects. And so our session essentially is on different scientific approaches in this way. Marine biology, there's a lot of research, bioprospection and product development ongoing, but still we know very little about ocean biodiversity. For example, more than 90% of the species living in the ocean are scientifically undocumented or very poorly studied. So microbiology of the ocean, we only know 1% of microbiology of the ocean. So we have a lot of terrain to cover. Microorganisms in a milliliter, 1 drop of ocean water, there are a huge amount of bacteria, archaea, fungi, but also bacteriophages and viruses that keep a balance of the microbiome of the ocean. A lot of secondary metabolites from those organisms are very important and very promising as new antibiotics or new biomolecules which can which have an important pharmaceutical role. Macro and macro algae are very important, as you know, for traditional interaction of population with the ocean, but obviously they are very important sources also of biofuels. For example, some green algae have up to 60% of their volume is consists of oil. So that's really very interesting. Extremophiles, which are organisms that live under high pressure, high temperature, etc., which we would think is incompatible with life, but still, you know, any molecular diagnostic you do with and blood tests and so on, use products that were isolated from marine organisms in thermal vents. Yeah, so they actually have a lot more product potential and role in our lives currently than we actually that we are aware of. Methodologies, obviously there's a lot of molecular biology, genomics, metagenomics, which is a study of genetic components of the organism, metabolomics for detection of new molecules, bioactivity screening for new potential molecules, and scale up for different production facilities are involved here. So it's not only pharmaceuticals but also nutraceuticals, which are important for food complements, cosmetics, biomaterials, and bioremediation is very important. You probably have read about the search for new microorganisms that can degrade plastic in ocean water, which is obviously, if the road from A to B, as we saw in the cartoon, is from here to there, but finding microorganisms to degrade the plastic there is not the simplest way to deal with the problem. There are some incongruences in human society, right? Well, a lot of them, but I want to draw some attention to Antarctica. If you, we're probably all from different countries, but if you look at the official maps, even the maps that they teach at school in geography to children, or official maps of a country, very often Antarctica is not there. I won't give some shocking examples, but although Antarctica is 10% of the Earth, the surface of land in the world, it's this is a wind picture on the left with the south of Latin America, and here the south of Africa. So the regime of low pressure and high pressure from Antarctica to the continent is extremely important. So all our weather in the continents, and here you see all the sea currents, so they're extremely important for climate. So everything that goes wrong with Antarctica will have a direct, immediate impact on the weather, on climate, on agriculture, on severe storms, etc. in our society. Yeah, there's a lot to say about that, but because of time. Antarctica is also a very intriguing continent, because it was originated in the original map of Gondwana and Pangaea 200 million years ago was one continent, and after its separation, Antarctica was more or less untouched until today. Even today, due to the agreement, Antarctica Agreement, the Treaty of Antarctica, it can only be accessed for scientific research and not for military nor for economic exploration, although some countries or some companies insist in going fishing there on whales, on krill, which is very, very destructive activity. But a lot of countries, or several countries, 27 countries, in fact, have research centers or bases on Antarctica. The Brazilians, I will show you, is on the left tip there. So this is our Brazilian research station in Antarctica, which has been finished and operational since 2020. Before that, there was another station, and Fiocruz, our institution, also has a research project within the polar research program of the Ministry of Health, Science, the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the Brazilian Navy. So the project is called FIOANTAR, and we also have a biosafety. We constructed a biosafety laboratory there, because obviously, if we look at our project is actually a joint project of different laboratories, research laboratories in virology, bacteriology, mycology, studies of fungi, parasitology, and also scientific collections, and a biobank, which is very important to manage the samples. So our objectives are, in the first place, surveillance, pathogen surveillance, both autochthonous pathogens of Antarctica, but also pathogens that are migrating with the birds and with the sea animals from the continent to Antarctica and back. Also, there's a lot of human presence in Antarctica, both from researchers, but also an increasing amount of tourists. There are tens of thousands of tourists every year that visit Antarctica with the cruise boats, and they obviously have limitations in what they can do, but still it's a very important presence, and it's notable. We can detect presence of new pathogens, for example, because of that. We study biodiversity and the ecosystem, bioprospection for new molecules, capacity strengthening also for our researchers in polar science, and education and popularization of science, which is very important because a lot of people don't know anything about Antarctica. It's a mythical mythical white country. With only snow and penguins, but obviously there's a lot of biosphere there, which is very important. Okay, so there's obviously a lot of preparation for that. This is our research lab, the biosafety lab at the right. So we have a preparation training from the Brazilian Marine. We prepare a lot of materials, and a lot of young students, they engage in the research activities, and then we have very close planning to sample different penguin swabs, for example. We collect feces and excretes from animals, soil, water, lichens. Lichens are very important, interesting organisms. I won't go into that, and also carcasses from so that we can know why a certain animal has died. Part of the research can be done in Antarctica, on Antarctica itself, but also the rest in our laboratories at Fiocruz. This is just an example, or these are not publications from our group, but from two other groups, just to show in 2023 the H5N1 virus, how it spread from the west side of the South American continent. They progressed from Chile to the tip of the continent, and then raised with the sea animals on the Argentinian coast to Uruguay and to Brazil. And from there, it obviously also spread to Antarctica and to other islands in the southern hemisphere. And it just in 2020 and 2023, more than 600,000 sea animals have died because of H5N1. The animal death in Antarctica was still very limited, but we were very much afraid that this year things will get a lot worse. We have detected other viruses, influenza viruses, for example, but also coronaviruses on Antarctica. Different new fungi in Antarctica, also that infect sea animals. Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of logistics and biobanking, stocking and inventories going on with the samples, so we also can share with other research groups and keep also samples for the future, for future methodologies, etc. A lot of our scientists are female, so we have a very strong, strong research group, a lot of computational analysis to analyze the biosystems, scientific publications, and also a lot of social media activity, international collaborations with different institutions. So we have to work really very hard in advancing our knowledge on the ocean, and I thank you for your attention.
Unfortunately, I have to keep pressing for the time, but thanks a lot. You were able to bring a very comprehensive, deep dive in terms of Antarctica. I just want to bring attention of two other features in the case of Fiocruz and Brazil. We deal also with what it's called the Blue Amazon, which is a program that brings the question of the oceans in Brazil and river basins. And we have a novelty in Brazil, which was very important, was the creation of the National Institute of Ocean Research, which is in Brazil, it's INPO, who is now a very important hub for making network and having the connection in terms of research. And we are very much connected. INPO already established that Blue and Health is one of the areas, and then a report for the Science and Technology Ministry that will come out now. Blue and Health will be one of the topics that are addressed. And we just signed, we will be signing during the COP, cooperation with INTO and Fiocruz. Okay, now we'll move to, I hope I have the right pronunciation. Sandy Tomala or Tomala? Tomala. Sandy Tomala is a research group leader of the Southern Ocean Carbon Climate Observatory from CSIR. She's a biogeochemical oceanographer. Her expertise lies in understanding the role of the Southern Ocean in the global carbon cycle and improve Earth's system model, leading also efforts in developing ocean robotics, advancing capacity building in South Africa, and translating ocean climate science into insights for policy and climate action. Ufa! A lot of things. Huh?
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today and to tell you a little bit more about SOCO, South Africa's National Ocean Climate Science Program. Let me just figure this out quickly. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to be talking about SOCO, the Southern Ocean Carbon Climate Observatory, of which I'm the research group leader, taken over from my predecessor, Pedro Montero. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program, who we are, what we do, and why. So starting off with the why. So why the Southern Ocean? And that's because the Southern Ocean is considered the climate flywheel of the planet. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I heard that term, I had to go Google what a flywheel does. But when I found out in engineering terms what a flywheel does, it became really apparent how that is appropriate term to describe the Southern Ocean, because a flywheel, the inertia of a flywheel opposes and moderates fluctuations and stores excess energy, which is exactly what the Southern Ocean does for our planet. The Southern Ocean alone takes up 50% of the ocean's CO2 uptake, and it takes up 75% of the excess heat that's being generated by the anthropogenic CO2 that's remaining in our ocean, in our atmosphere. So the Southern Ocean plays a disproportionate role when it comes to buffering the impacts of climate change. And so understanding the sensitivity of the Southern Ocean to change is really important, and arguably one of the most important scientific and policy challenges of the 21st century. But the Southern Ocean also accounts for most of the uncertainty when we look at our global climate projections to 2100. So on here is looking at the sea surface temperature bias that are in the CMIP Earth system models, and you can see the Southern Ocean has the largest bias. The middle one is looking at the uncertainty of the CO2 flux, and you can see the largest uncertainty between all of the models is in the Southern Ocean. And what that leads to is when you have research like this, where the observations are showing you the seasonal cycle of the CO2 flux from the spots in the subantarctic zone. These are all the different CMIP models. You can see that they're not getting the seasonal cycle of the CO2 flux right, either in amplitude or in timing. But as the Southern Ocean is also very poorly sampled. And this can lead to part of the problem. So if you look at the tropics, the blue is the observations and the black is the models. And you can see that the CO2 flux in the models and the observations in the tropics are really good. Whereas here in the Southern Ocean, you can see there's a bias, and there's the observations are higher than the model. So that might be because the models aren't accurately representing some of the key processes, particularly around scales. But it could also be linked to this poor coverage in both temporal and spatial of the CO2 flux observations themselves. You can see how well the Northern Hemisphere is resolved, but how poorly the Southern Ocean is. And also all the observations we have are in blue, which means they're in summer when we can access the Southern Ocean. So part of this discrepancy might also be driven by biases in the observations themselves and not necessarily the models, and more likely a combination of both. So this is now speaking to the scales. So the Southern Ocean is highly variable, unresolved, and very difficult to observe. So this is looking at the storms that are immense, intense, and frequent that are passing over the Southern Ocean. And those storms are interacting with a very variable physical structure of the water column. But this here is what the Earth system models are able to resolve. They're not resolving the storms or how those storms are interacting with these fine scale variability. And so really the Earth system models are likely to be missing some key processes. On top of that, I just wanted to bring home how complex the system is of driving CO2 flux. So not only have you got all the physical processes of upwelling and outgassing and subduction and the thermodynamics of the water that's holding the CO2 gas, you've also got the biological component where all these single-celled phytoplankton plants are photosynthesizing, taking the carbon out of the atmosphere, sinking it down, but it's being impacted by zooplankton and microbes that are remineralizing it, dictating how much carbon is being stored down here. So it's a really complex system. So SOCO, when it was initiated 13 years ago, had a hypothesis that allowed a very small research group to make quite a big impact in the international landscape. And that hypothesis was quite novel at the time, but not so much anymore because it's gained a lot of traction. But that hypothesis was that the fine scale ocean dynamics are really key to being able to understand the role of the Southern Ocean in global century scale trends and regional climate. And this figure just really highlights this. This is a satellite ocean color image. And you can see the chlorophyll that's being distributed by the physics at these very fine scales. So if you're not going to resolve the fine scales of variability at which the processes are occurring, then you're likely to not inaccurately characterize the system. And if you can't characterize the system on a seasonal cycle, then how are we going to predict how it's changing in the long term? So SOCO is now on its phase 5. I'm busy working on phase 5, so this is still a little bit in progress, but we've had 4 phases. It's been 13 years in the running. Phase 5 will start next year. Theme 1 looks at the ocean atmosphere coupling of heat, CO2, and oxygen. Oxygen is a new one in phase 5. at fine scales in order to constrain the climate feedbacks. Theme 2 is looking at the biological carbon pump and how sensitive it is to change. Theme 3, I'm working on this title, but really this is trying to get from innovation to policy. But under this theme is where we have our long-term observations, our machine learning, our data products, our innovation around sensor development, all sitting in this sort of innovation space to support policy. And theme 4 is a new one. We started this in phase 4, where we really recognized a gap in policy, national policy, to really support the innovations around marine CDR that are coming our way. And we want to be able to build national capability to support the policy space around analyzing the efficacy, the scalability, the feasibility, and the risk of many of these technologies that are coming to our shore. And what that means really is a lot of phase 5 is also taking our seasonal cycle lens with fine scales from just the Southern Ocean and actually expanding it to global applications and more localized applications around the coastline. So those are our 4 themes, and now I'm going to talk to our 4 priority areas. So our first priority area is observation. So if you want to understand the fine scale dynamics of a system, you have to be able to observe those fine scales. So that's why we've invested really heavily in ocean robotics and satellite remote sensing. So we typically have a wave glider surface platform, which is measuring the ocean atmosphere CO2 flux. Underneath it, we have a profiling buoyancy glider that's measuring both the physical and biological characteristics of the water column, so you can get that integrated ocean atmosphere understanding. We also do a lot of technological innovation. We have a Vegas PCO2 sensor, which we've developed in-house, which sits on our wave glider, and we are developing it further to have ship applications, terrestrial applications, buoy moorings and buoys, etc. But we also work with satellites and a lot with our ship-based observations to deploy our gliders, but also we have incubation studies and a lot of process studies where we understand characteristics of phytoplankton, and that understanding is what gets incorporated into model parameterizations. Our second priority is our data products and tools, and primarily these data products are used to improve model-based constraints. Our sort of flagship one is our global CO2 flux data product. So you can see here where I was talking about the sort of gaps that we have temporally and spatially. So we've developed a machine learning data product, which actually generates 6 different CO2 flux products, but we create a model ensemble of them. So we get one that uses satellite imagery at high resolution with machine learning to basically fill the gaps. This is one of only 6 global CO2 flux data products in the world, and it goes into the global carbon budget, which is used for IPCC. We also have some satellite data products. This one here is looking at a global multi-model net primary production using 6 different primary production models. So you can download this. It's updated annually, and you can get it for your particular region and look what the characteristics of primary production are and how it's changing over time, over the 26-year data period. Same here, this is looking at phytoplankton phenology. So we have all these different metrics of phenology telling you when does the phytoplankton bloom, when does it end, what is its amplitude, how is its duration, what is its characteristics of variability. Again, that is all available on ESSD to download and to use as you wish. But what we want to do now is really use all of these data products and start generating more indices for policy around like triple whammy events and anomalies and trends, and look at sensitive regions where we're having lots of changes in these variable products that we're developing. Our third priority area is models, where we want to really advance modeling and modeling capabilities, particularly ultimately towards strengthening Earth system model projections. So we have a hierarchy of increasing resolution of models that are ocean, atmosphere, ice, and biogeochemistry coupled. And primarily we use them for experimental understanding. A lot of it is about understanding biology and parameterizations, and a lot about understanding what the scale sensitivities is, and ultimately how we can parameterize the fine scale resolution into coarser Earth system models. The fourth one, our fourth priority area, is capacity building. So we put a lot of effort, and we're really proud of our capacity building to generate a new generation of graduates that are highly skilled, basically leveraging all of that technology we have in robotics and machine learning, but really generating some highly skilled graduates that are really able to address the challenges of the 21st century. And of course, I've spoken to this earlier, but recognizing a gap in our capabilities to support policy around marine carbon dioxide removal strategies that are coming our way. So we're really trying to build capabilities around models and observations to create a policy support platform for our for government. So just 2 more slides to sort of like brag a little bit, but SOCO, we started back here in 2011, but since then we've published 144 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and a lot of them in particularly in the later years, really getting into some high-end journals in science and nature climate change, reviews, earth and environment, etc. And of course our postgraduate HCD program, where we've trained 104 postgrads. Our postgrads are MSc and PhD students. You can see how we've increased from when we had 1. But typically we have about 17 PhD and MSc students. We've trained 71 in the science space, and they're about 80% transformation, and we're keeping that consistent. Then we also have a partnership with an SMME, which is going a 10-year ongoing partnership, which is SA Robotic, our South African Robotics Ocean Technology and Innovation Center. So these basically, this is where we do all our sensor development and innovation and our piloting of our gliders and deployments. And they've also trained 33 electronic engineering students through that. And so really, I guess I was looking at Martin Visbeck, and this must have come through some influence from there. So my apologies for never having recognized where it originated from in the first place. But here you've got your science to society value chain, where you've got the observations we're doing, the data products we're making, the technological innovation. That's really feeding into the analysis that we do in the system, understanding that we generate, which is ultimately being integrated into modeling for improved projections, predictions, and risks, which is how we get to the societal benefits through policy support, partnerships with government, and global assessments. And with that, I thank you for the time and for having me.
It's amazing work SOCO is doing. I was very much impressed with the productivity, with the setup you have, because it's very interesting, the connections you do with capacity building, the policies and so forth. It's a focus, of course, in the carbon climate, but it's very, very interesting. For me, very instructive to think in terms of this question of modeling in the different questions of let's see, more fine modeling as part of something that reveals new dynamics. Actually, we'll be moving now to Luis Paulo Assad, who also works with modeling at one of the most important institutions in technology in Brazil, COPE. And Luis Paulo is a joint professor of the Department of Meteorology of COPE, permanent professor the graduate program Meteorology by the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and researcher and technical coordinator of the Environmental Modeling Center of the Laboratory of Computation Methods in Engineering. He has experience in the area of physics oceanography, with an emphasis on computation, ocean modeling. I don't know if Luis Paulo will address this, but I want to bring, I want to bring also you don't have to talk about modeling, but I just wanted to make the connections because we are talking about networking and possible cooperation. I think COP is some institution that would be very interesting to partner with. But one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, but Luis Paulo is very much involved in this also, is that we have a strong work that involves also assessing the effects of the ocean problems in coastal populations. And he's very much involved. We have a project on what we call the Life Bay in Rio de Janeiro and other projects around Brazil. And in the case of Fiocruz, we are the hub for a network that is called the Manirua Network that unites all the coast of Brazil with local fishermen, traditional populations, and so forth. Now it has Chile and other areas of Europe have joined, and also I think there are now some African countries. And the main focus is to think of vulnerabilities, how the territorial and the community agents deals with the question related to the ocean. So, Luis Paulo, the floor is yours.
So thanks, Paulo, for the invitation to be here today, talking about a theme that is very important, blue ocean health. I must confess that is new in my life, this concept. I have heard for the first time in a meeting together with Zé Moutinho, Turra, and you, Paulo Gadelha, inside Fiocruz. And since of then, I start to read with some papers, articles, and publications, and try to understand more the concepts. And I start to think how to measure, how to quantify blue ocean health, how to quantify these interactions between human health and ocean's health. Okay, so the idea of this presentation is really a big brainstorm, okay, about some perspectives and some feelings and some things that I have regarding this theme, how we can measure blue one health. Okay, so I know where I can, I know where I will arrive, but I really don't know how can I will access this. Okay, let's go. So this is the theme, Blue One Health Assessment. It's important to say, is a Brazilian strategy view. Okay, it's a personal view from me and my team. And okay, I think that Turra already mentioned, and Turra and also Wim de Grave mentioned One Health concept. I can pass fast by this, and the Blue One Health concept, that is an extension of the traditional One Health approach, including the dimension of the oceans and the marine ecosystems. And here I have again a description of the ocean and human health concepts. Okay, that is basically the Blue One Health concept in this publication of Fleming et al. 2023. And this is the sustainable cycle for the ocean in the publication of Martin Wiesbeck, that is wrongly written there. Okay, but I take out from the publication of him that you can see the natural resources and the natural provisions that the ocean gives to us. Turra talk about most of them, and the benefits that the ocean gives to the society, and the footprints that unfortunately us, the society, do with the oceans, and the threats, okay, like climate change, oil spills, pollution in general. And of course, we have the agenda of the group dedicated to the ocean science for sustainable development, the Decade of the Oceans, that give us some support and some directions how we must deal with this, trying to mitigate and minimize these aspects. But bringing back again for my presentation, how we can protect and preserve marine ecosystems and can protect and preserve the health and well-being of people is about this. And my presentation, the idea, as I mentioned to you, is I take this question in this article of Borges et al. 2020, the need to develop methods and tools to measure the importance of ocean health on human health. How you can measure this, okay? So there are a lot of questions that you can do. I will not read all of them. Okay, thank you. It's better, feel more free. There's a lot of questions that we need to do. And for example, how will climate change will affect the health of the ocean, health of the human? How will we make an integrated diagnosis of the ocean human health? Okay. What health aspects should be monitored? Which environments of ecosystems should have their health monitored? A lot of questions that we need to understand and read the answer regarding trying to measure the blue one health. So, of course, this is a multidisciplinary approach, and there are some concepts that are important to mention. The first of them is resilience There's the capacity of a system to adapt and recover after being affected by a disturbance. Susceptibility, that is environmental, refers to the likelihood of a natural phenomenon such as coastal erosion, flooding at the ecosystem. Sensitivity, environmental sensitivity represents a degree of fragility of an environment to a given phenomenon, that could be climate change or an oil spill, for example. And finally, you can access the vulnerability that integrates these three aspects, okay? Is a function of the character, of a magnitude and rate of a given phenomenon and variation to which a system is exposed, okay? So represent these three aspects. And we can talk about vulnerability regarding oil pollution, climate change, weather extreme events, and human health also. And of course, this is a multidisciplinary approach, and you need to approximate ocean science with other science, okay? I think that Tuhan mentioned something like that, and this was clearly demonstrated also in the presentation of Wim de Graaf, and also in the presentation of our colleague from CSIR. We need to understand a lot of chemistry, a lot of biology and physics of the oceans to understand the CO2, for example, distribution. And there are other questions. Who aspects we need to consider to understand Blue One Health? Okay, there are a lot of aspects: social, chemistry, oceanography, meteorology, geology, economics, health. You need to do an integrated monitoring and diagnosis. And also the scales. Which are the scales you are interested in? A planetary scale, a country scale, a state scale, or a territory scale? Depending on the question that you want to respond about the Blue One Health, we need to have a multi-scale monitoring, okay? So this both answers depend if you are interested in the local pollution or a climate change, that is a global process, if there is a local engineering problem or environmental vulnerabilities of a place. And we have some instruments and some indexes that are already developed. For example, we have an index, the environmental sensitivity index, that could be applied, for example, for oil spills, and NOAA creates a classification that goes to exposed rocks with less sensitivity, and to mangroves that has, of course, more sensitivity to oil spills. And this is only gives respect to the ecosystems, okay? So we have sand beaches, rocky places, and mangroves, and you can put this in a map together with human use resource, biological resource, and trying to understand the space distribution of sensitivity and associate this with biological and human and infrastructure properties in the area. Then you have also index that reveal to us, for example, the susceptibility. So we can have the susceptibility of a place regarding a threat associated with oil spill. So this we need numerical modeling, for example, to understand how an oil spill will affect an area regarding the oceanographic and meteorological conditions. So depending on the conditions, you're going to have an area more exposed or less exposed, more susceptible or less susceptible to an oil spill. And now you have economy, ecosystem, oceanographic, and meteorological. More information that you need to consider. And finally, you have the vulnerability. And the vulnerability, you need to understand the resiliency, susceptibility, and sensitivity. So this is an example of an index, okay? And the important thing is not the equation, but the variables that we need to understand. And the last two are very important: human activities and population. The other ones are related to oceanographic and meteorological variables, and geological also ones. And this is an example of a vulnerability associated with sea level rise in India, okay? So maps like that help us to understand what is the health in the future of these areas, okay? Only the areas, okay? But you start to integrate the vulnerability of the ecosystem with the human activities. And then you have the Ocean Health Index that Tuha showed to us. And of course, it considers a lot of variables, like, for example, carbon storage, food provision, artisanal fishing, clean waters, biodiversity, okay? Basically, are variables that deals with the pressure of the ocean and resilience of the ocean environments. And you have a site that you can access the Ocean Index. And I made a question, and human health. a direct variable that considers human health. You don't have this variable inside this variable. So this could be maybe a thing that you can use, an index that you can use to integrate with human health. Of course, this ocean index was applied in another article, and Turra also showed the results here in Brazil, sorry. And as we see, the regional study reveals to us a score index of 60. And then when we compare with the global perspective with the same index of Brazil, is 62. Almost no difference. And why this happens? Because we have a lot of limitation, because this study considers only oil navigation, only navigation impacts considered. Don't consider the oil and gas industry impacts. Don't consider the future developments associated with offshore wind farms. And you have many data lack regional detail. They use a lot of average of these variables along the Brazilian coast. And this is not the reality of our country, that, as I will show to you further in the presentation, has a lot of difference in distribution of these aspects, okay? So talking about the coast, of course, coastal regions is the regions where you have mostly clear the interaction between humans and the oceans. And of course, when you have population growth, you have shoreline damages, and this map showed this for us. And as, of course, Windegrave said a little bit about this, but 12 out of 15 megacities are coastals. So unfortunately, we have a lot of impacts. I go fastly. This is the Brazil reality. We have a very wide coastal region with different ecosystems like mangroves, tidal plains, sand beaches, rocky coast, and of course, human areas. We have different uses in economical aspects in Brazil. And we have also a country with continental scale that you have 6 types of climates, 6 biomes, unities, a lot of different social and economical aspects. And this reflects even in disease spreads over this region. This is a map of 2009 and 2010 revealing for us the difference in H1N1 disease in this year. And you need to understand the regional scale. So we have a lot of difference in these characters along the Brazil. I go fastly now, okay? So this fluxogram trying to show to you, for example, the link between ocean health and human health. If you have, for example, in a local scale, domestic and industrial effluents, they can produce toxic algal growth, eutrophication of coastal waters, and impact local fish, impact the marine environment, causing human contamination and impacts on mental health. We need to link these things. This is an example of Guanabara Bay. It's a place, a bay near Rio de Janeiro, very important. And you have a lot of benefits and that this an ecosystem service that this bay provides for the community. And unfortunately have a lot of threats like oil spills, marine pollution, industry. We are already affected by extreme weather events and climate change. This is January 2000. We have a very strong oil spill in that area. And because of this, some institutions developed some operational systems of modeling, trying to integrate this with index, social and environmental index, trying to understand the resilience and the vulnerability of the place, but we still need to understand the health of the place. And when you go to the regional scale, for example, we have other, for example, the increase in commercial navigation will impact on human health related, for example, impact on food production, impact on the use of the marine environment, impact on local biodiversity, migration of communities, and impact on mental health. This happens, for example, in 2019, with a strong oil spill that we have in the coast of Brazil. We act in that occasion trying to understand the source of this oil spill. We find this region, and unfortunately, it was directly related with the traffic of ships that happened in that area. The bad news is that the new frontier of oil production will be the equatorial margin of Brazil, where you have a very continuous line of mangrove, one of the biggest around the world, and coral reefs. So we need to understand now the ocean health of this place to have a baseline. And these are some impacts that we have. Look at this fisherman. This happens a lot during this tragedy because people want to remove the oil from the mangroves and put the sandy beaches where they take their day-to-day work. And we don't have any monitoring about the impacts of the human health of these guys. And these are a lot of social and economic impacts that we have in the coast of Brazil during this event, okay? So talking about the global scale, to be faster, sorry, Dr. Paulo.
Sorry for us.
And climate change provokes, for example, seawater heating and sea level rise that have different social, economic, and environmental impacts that, by the other side, will impact on mental health, impact on human health, and human poisoning, for example. And of course, this is not a food program that comes only by this direction. We need to understand the circle, the circularity of these things. And of course, climate change, everybody knows the impacts that they're causing. For example, the increased frequency and intensity of extreme meteorological, hydrological, and oceanographic events. We already see this in Rio de Janeiro City. These are some photos that you can see the impacts over some coastal structures. So this happens now, okay? So imagine 20, 30 years ahead. And this is an article that we produced there doing a downscaling to understand the flood processes in front of an RCP scenario from IPCC. And then this is an area at the bottom of the Guanabara Bay, a mangrove area called the Environmental Protection Area of Guapimirim. And we did this for other areas also. And after that, we use a coastal flood vulnerability index to understand in the present scenario, in the future scenario, what is going to work with the vulnerability regarding to flood processes. And as you see in this map, everything is homogeneous. Okay, this is not true or finalized because we use an index that was based only in oceanographic numerical models. And of course, mangroves and urban areas will react in different ways. And we need to integrate with social, economic, and environmental data sets and need to understand the impacts on human health. So this is my last slide, okay? This is an idea of a Blue One Health measure framework. We start to need to identify the region of interest, trying to understand the area of influencing and the identification of the threats and interaction processes of human health and ocean health, diagnosis, so we need to understand which data we have and which data we need to acquire, and after that, we need to do this diagnosis with economic aspects, social aspects, human health, and ocean and environment. And the results associated with that is the generation, for example, a document to support the integrated management of ocean health and human health for a given region. Sorry about the time. This was my words. Thank you very much for the attention.
Great. When we have these possibilities of tackling complex problems such as One Health or Blue One Health, we may have two problems. When dealing more generally, we may not be able to produce possibilities of intervention and just make a sort of a general statement in terms of the connections. When we have too much fragments, we may lose the synergies. So, I mean, this is the challenge of complex themes. And I think the contributions we're having today are helping very much to move forward this idea of Blue One Health, think in terms of indexes, tools, and possibilities of connections. And we are really moving in a very fantastic direction. Thanks a lot, Luiz Paulo. We are in a deep dive session of G-STIC. And I would mention also this was, we thought from Fiocruz that it was important to reinstate at G-STIC the theme of oceans. And we will try to do this permanently because it's so important. And we didn't have this last year. So it's very nice to have you all here. And I think this shows the relevance of the theme. No? But I said we are in a deep dive, and now we are going to deep dive in the ocean with José Moutinho. He is the chief business and network developer of Ocean Quest. Has an extensive background in environmental science and integrated ecosystem management, and has done distinguished work in creating networks and worldwide reflections of sustainable practices in marine governance, strengthening the role of multi-sectorial collaboration in achieve ocean-related SDG targets. And Moutinho has many other capabilities, including his fantastic chef, no? But this we'll talk to you later.
Everything that we've been to Southern Ocean, we've been to Antarctica, we've been to Equatorial Atlantic, we've been to West Atlantic, and now, but all these represents only less than 5% of the ocean. 95% of the ocean is below 200 meters. So we do not see anything about the deep ocean normally in our lives. But even more important, only 25%, around 25% of the deep ocean is mapped. Less than 5% is explored, and less than 1% has ever been imaged in terms of science. So we're talking about now we will start in the realm of the exploration and to understand what the deep sea could bring to this idea, to the Blue One Health, and also to the benefit of humanity. And it's a very new foundation. I mean, I started working there for a few months only. And what we are doing right now is developing a platform to open to researchers all over the world a possibility of exploring the deep ocean. We are starting to build our vessel. I mean, our vessel will be 100 and 120 meters long. We have a fleet of robots. Idea is to have about 20 robots. And also we have a second supporting vessel for the Red Sea, and maybe one of these observation stations in the future. So what we are going to do is basically provide the access. We don't have many scientists. Definitely we won't develop the technology. This will be open for the society, and I'll show this, how we already did this together with Ocean Explorer, with the South African science community a few months ago. So we focus, I mean, can you imagine, I mean, talking about the deep sea, I mean, it's vast, unknown. It's talk about, I will use the Saudi Arabia desert as an example. When you talk about the desert, it's a very interesting place to be. I've been there quite a few times already. But the place to be is not in the desert, it's in the oasis. So our focus is on seamounts. Seamounts are underwater mountains, basically volcanic origin in most of the times. Well, technically they are always volcanoes, but there are other structures that we also, I mean, we want to study that are not exactly from volcanic origin, but these are the oases of the deep sea. This is very important. Then this is where you can start to understand the deep sea, because they have a huge importance. For example, they connect the deep sea to the shallow waters. There are some of these mountains that are as deep as 4,000 meters, and they are so close to the surface, sometimes just a few 10, 20 meters. I'll show photographs of the water shows where we explored together with the South African scientists. That was barely 30 meters. You go deep down from 2,000 meters to 4,000 meters. The biggest mountain on Earth is basically a seamount that went up, which is Hawaii. For example, Hawaii has almost 10,000 kilometers high if you count from the bottom. So that's what we're doing. I mean, we focus on these mountains. And they have a lot of interesting chemical and biological processes that are not understood. Of course, they are very important biodiversity spots, and they're very important. They have a very important economic, importance in terms of fisheries. Now, there are seamounts everywhere. These dots look like they are everywhere, and we'll know where they are. Actually, they don't. We don't. These are images taken from gravimetry and altimetry from satellites, and this is basically an idea where the seamounts could be. But we try to explore a seamount in the Maldives June this year, and when we arrived, this mountain wasn't there. In our maps that we had, the seamount was a wonderful seamount, just a few miles off Malé, capital of Maldives, and we expect to find a mountain about 2,000 to 3,000 meters high, and it was flat. So we are dealing really with, uncertainty all the time we're exploring this. So this is the last map. We have about 60,000 seamounts distributed all over the world, mostly on faults only in the mid regions of the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. But there could be more, like 100,000. There could be less, like 40, 30,000. A lot of uncertainty. But the most important, less than 500 have been explored. So that's the amount of, exploration we need to do in the next years to understand seamounts. I know. So basically, they are underexplored geological features. They exist in every ocean basin, under the surface, or sometimes very close to the surface. And they rise up from 5,000, 4,000, 5,000 meters to the very close to the surface. And again, this is the old number, 40,000, have been mapped but not explored. That's the most important thing. And seamounts are often volcanic. They are mapped from satellite. This is important. And seamounts are of volcanic or tectonic origin and often associated with ocean ridges. And so what is the benefit? One of the things that every time we present the seamounts, to our board of trustees, but why are you looking for seamounts? What do you expect from having seamounts? What's the connection to society? So again, the benefits that hotspots of biodiversity, they're like stocks of biodiversity. Sometimes you see, just to give an example, we had a seamount that was explored in Red Sea. We had a presentation about 2 weeks ago. And in a single dive, a ROV brought samples of 7 new families, 11 new genera, and more than 100 species. A single dive. Just to give you a number, 7 new families. This is mind-boggling. To have new families like that. So, of course, this is very important to enhance public engagement. Why is that important? Everybody is transfixed when you talk about space exploration. And when we start to talk about the deep sea and show these beautiful images of octopus, of, like whales 2,000 meters down trying to eat some giant squids, things like that, it really, really drives attention from the public and the decision makers in general. They also drive technological innovations to send a ROV 6,000 meters down to explore, to collect samples. We need very high technology, available for the scientists. And sometimes there are some areas, for example, in the Red Sea, there's the famous pool brines, where the salinity is so high that basically nobody wants to send the technology because, it's so corrosive that you probably use this technology once or twice and then gone, they will be gone. So also, it's important because it's so vast that we need to promote global collaboration. Without global collaboration, we cannot explore the deep sea. And even more important, we want to bring these solutions to global challenges. So, and also it's very important because the deep sea, as has been mentioned several times, is a sink of carbon. This is very important. So understanding, the consequences of carbon sequestration in the deep sea is very important. And also all the biogeochemical process as well, and also how it is linked to all the cycles of carbon cycle, water cycle, linking to the people that live in coastal areas. So, and they have a lot of applications. First one is, it's huge biodiversity. I just mentioned that 7 families in one single dive. 90%, maybe more, of all the biodiversity of the deep sea is not known. And also, it's interesting to understand adaptation to extreme environments, already mentioned by Vin. It is very important. So there are some, again, going back to this presentation on the Red Sea, they discovered microbial mats that never been discovered before. They still don't know what they observed. They got the samples. They're having trouble now to categorize, even at the large scale, where is these microorganisms fit on the basically categorization of life. They've been studying that for 3 years, and they're just being called microbiota maps. When you pergunto what is it composed for, the answer is, I don't have a clue. We don't even have DNA metabarcoding to compare because everything is so new. So it's very important then to understand the evolutionary processes, food security, because the seamounts are very important for fisheries in general, and also the whole ecosystem functioning that's completely unknown for the conservation aspects. And then, of course, again, I mean, I go this one directly. So there's an important thing as well, that is the medical advancements in industrials. We've been working now, trying to bring, field crews on board of some of these vessels to explore, to prospect some pharmaceuticals, some metabolites, so we can try to come up with some medications. And again, very important is the part of the technology, not only the human side, but also the technology. It brings public awareness. It's very interesting. Kids love to work with drones. They love to look, but also with ROVs and all these kind of submarines, disaster resilience, cultural enrichment, and the technology spill over, like the Apollo, effect. They try to send the man to the moon, and the computers that we have today basically come from the advancements during the Apollo mission. And also all these transformative outcomes that integrates all the knowledge in one single knowledge. So that's the complex. I won't go through this, but that is complex of seamounts. That's unknown. So we are studying now distribution of seamounts. We are trying to understand why seamounts matter. How this is a thriving or biodiversity can help us to understand, life in general, and also developing state-of-the-research tools. And finally, we are now creating an international seamount science program to try to put it all together to how can we study seamounts in an integrated and collaborative way, and finally to understand the formation and evolution of seamounts. And we already started to do that. We do not have, but I really want to show this photo because we did this with South Africa. It was a fantastic Around Africa expedition. And our focus is the Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean, of course, the Red Sea. And we went together with a South African-led team by Lara Atkinson, Madagascar Ridge, Agulhas Plateau, and we did a fantastic research and wonderful mapping. And these are the team. We are very much focused on capacity building. These are Jody and Snow from Ceylon. They've been collecting and now studying DNA. They collected sponges for DNA beta barcoding. And that's where we've been. We started in Comoros. We wanted to start in Mozambique, but then we had a civil unrest. So we programmed to start on Comoros. We had a hurricane, so we finally started in Comoros. We had to change twice everything. We went to Water Shoal, which was devastated by trawling, completely barren. 7 kilometer, flat top seamounted, completely destroyed by trawling fishing. And then we went to an unnamed seamount that now has a name. Together with the authorities in Madagascar, we called Njaka, meaning the throne of the deep sea. And then we went to study the Africana seamounts, where I put together the images from Sandy and from Vin. We stayed 5 days in an eddy. Huge currents. We couldn't send a CTD down because the moment we would send the CTD down, it was behind us like 100 meters. So we couldn't. We just collected some fantastic mapping there, and we are planning to go back next year with Agulhas too. That's why I'm going to Cape Town next week to negotiate them the access to the. So that's what basically our research that we did over there, collecting data, geology, and biodiversity. And we had on board more than 30 ECOPs. It was absolutely fantastic. They worked with us very closely with the team. And we discovered new species. At the very end, we had the president of Cabo Verde diving on the submarine in Nola Seamounts in Cabo Verde. It was fantastic. They learned how to present media. They had a media training. And in Cape Town with the minister, Patrice de Lille, Patty was there with Juliet and Chiban. and also Minister Dean George as well on board of the vessel. This is just to see you inside the vessel. I mean, Paulo was there as well in the vessel. So we had kids we had more than 250 kids on board of the vessel. These are the cops. And then, well, that's what we've been doing and try to bring the deep sea to this discussion. Thank you.
Amazing I was able to control Moutinho's time, because usually, he keeps going. But fantastic. I think we had, I don't know, do we have time for a few questions, please? To the mic. Huh? Well, we may postpone a little bit lunchtime, and then have a discussion here. What time will be your 2? Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, firstly, that was a brilliant session. I really enjoyed every single talk. I'm from the UK. I'm a chief scientist in one of the departments in the UK. I've been working, I'm a pathologist, marine pathologist by training. 25 years ago, I've done that all my life, looked at disease in the sea. It brings together everything you just said. Recent years culminating in how we build One Health into what we do, and also One Health as an outcome from what we do. So some of that talk about how we articulate One Health in relation to marine is brilliant, and there's a challenge there. I think you framed it in terms of it's everything, and that therefore turns people off it because they just can't find a way in. But it's our job to kind of find those articulated sort of case studies, I guess, that where it really links. But my question is about the framing of this. And you asked a question at the start about what would COP want to say at a large scale. And one of the things that I've felt with all these talks and previously is that we're reaching a place where the undiscovered biodiversity, the 95, 99%, whatever it is actually mainly microbial. It's protists, it's single-cell protists, and bacteria and fungi and so on. So I think one of the big challenges, and all of that underpins the cycling of the ocean, health of organisms in it, health of us as we get exposed to it, etc., etc. But the focus of science and the focus of most of the work globally in all of our countries is on the big stuff. The big stuff that's a very thin veneer of taxonomy. So the question is collectively, do we need to really refocus collectively on microbial biodiversity and what it may do for us, positively and negatively going forward?
Okay, it's open to our speakers. It's open to our speakers. I think in terms of microbe and taxonomy and so forth, both Moutinho, who is a biologist, and Win may add. And I think in terms of COP, I think you could say something. Of course, it's open to Sandy and Luis.
Well, first, in relation to COP, first we need to insert the ocean in the COP forever and stress the ocean climate nexus, which has different directions. So the impact of the climate in the ocean, in different organisms, including the microorganisms, but also the other way around, understanding the fluxes of carbon and the role of microbes, of microorganisms in this, and also what we are losing if we are changing, if we are impacting the ocean. We can lose all the things that Jim said in terms of biotechnology and other things. And when we lose health in the ocean, we lose the capacity to deliver other benefits, including foods, for example, which is linked directly and indirectly with the microbes and the microorganisms. So this should be the ocean COP in Brazil, because we want to put the ocean in the statements, and then we want that it stays there forever.
It's a desire. Strong desire.
Yeah. Scientific research on biodiversity is we only know very small bit of it, and we can't just focus on one specific thing. It's multidimensional, and so many research groups all over the world, they should pay more attention, obviously, not only on biodiversity of ocean, because on land or in the Amazon region, or even living research. It's one of my projects in the lab. We very often find 85 to 90% of unknown, unrelated sequences in if you look at any ecosystem. But for sure, the ocean has an immense amount of possibilities for new molecules and new applications, etc. Yeah, I think our main interest would really, in the first place, be to know about it. Because, like in the microbiome, which is really very spectacular as an ecosystem, yeah, it's very surprising that we don't know anything about it. And obviously, the biotech applications are very interesting, etc. But they shouldn't be the big drive, I think, because as said, we just think on growing industrially and getting much more expensive, more sophisticated, more of everything. We certainly won't save the world from overheating but knowing about the biosphere of the ocean is something very, very exciting. It's a challenge also for all so many other sciences like diving systems, all the electronics databases, because any biodiversity research expands our databases in terms of genetic sequences, but also so many other aspects of regulation of biosystems. So it's very exciting. We do as much as fast as we can, but it's relatively expensive research, and a lot more money is spent on other things, unfortunately.
Just to complement optimistic view of the future of the EasyCops that were there. We asked them what they want to study after being on board of the Ocean Explorer. 80% of them is about microorganisms. I mean, they found it is a huge potential for their scientific career. It was unbelievable. All of us, they came from mammals observation to CO2 studies, and now they are completely focused now on starting their careers as in studying microorganisms.
So it's very nice to see that the people, once they get united with the scientific knowledge and scientific life, they're hooked forever in their career and their interests to expand knowledge. So that's very nice to work with students.
Okay, let's move. It's always open to the other speakers, but we have another question or comment.
So I was working in water shoal and seamount research a few years ago. At the time, I was looking at the yellowtail fisheries and how the area was so sustainable and there was so much of biodiversity that it was becoming a very popular fisheries area. And we were working with the department to try and see how we could protect those seamounts from overfishing. So I'm very disappointed now to hear that there's not much left. How do seamounts then fit into marine protected areas, and how is the conservation and policy around them?
In this case, now it is a little bit protected because there are some agreements from the fisheries associations to protect this area, but after devastation, so that's why probably it's really, for what I heard, I mean, it's a barren land today. There are some small corals starting to grow again, but basically it's barren land, completely destroyed.
When I was studying it, I was looking at roof footage, and I was looking at the health of the yellowtail population, and at that time, the ecosystem was thriving. So
Yeah. We went deep down until about, we collected samples up down to 2,000 meters. As you go down to the seamount, of course, there are much more biodiversity, but on the top, of the flat top of the water show, it's barren.
Just about 10 minutes.
Okay,
we will be moving. There is another person, Tora. And no, go ahead, Tora.
Yeah, just to say that
she told me that we have to wrap up, and we have 10 minutes because they have to prepare the room for another session. But Tora, and then
just to say that we have the institutional arrangements improving. We have the EBSAs, ecologically and biologically and ecologically relevant areas under the CDB. We have the APAs, which are the areas of particular ecological interest in the International Sea Bed Authority, areas that should be defined and implemented. And we have the BBNJ Treaty, which has marine protected areas as one of its tools. So we are better than some years ago, and we have the tools to implement. So we need to enforce this.
Go ahead.
Yes. So just to follow up on your comments now, so what sort of influence do the research institutes, the scientists, the oceanographers, have on policy? On governmental policy that deal with all these issues of conservation, and I'm specifically also thinking about the fishing industry, the overfishing. These are extremely big, powerful industries that you have to go up against. And I'm actually remembering about a documentary that I watched about a trawling, where they trawl the beds, of the sea, and they remove everything. So what sort of influence do you have to put policies in place that'll stop that sort of treatment of the ocean?
Yeah, one good example. Like last year, we discovered the black oxygen, which is produced by nodules, by electrolysis in the deep sea, generating oxygen for the deep sea organisms. We didn't know that. After knowing that, the moratorium against deep sea mining was strengthened. So the science supported the decision of other countries to support moratorium or precautionary pause. In Brazil, we have good examples of a very natural co-design process between science and policy, and we have spaces or moments to discuss and to build together. In the international arenas, we also have that, but fisheries are a very difficult sector to dialogue with, differently from others. But we need to keep pushing and awareness raising and making advocacy.
Yes, I agree with you. Probably awareness raising. Get the public on your side, so that you can push these policies to protect the marine environment.
Okay, I'm asking whether Luis Paulo or Sandy have any final. Well, we have to wrap up. I sometimes I'm ironic about sessions at the UN or here or elsewhere that they say this was really unique, fantastic session and so forth. But truly, this was a very, very nice session. I think we did fantastic work of moving forward with different perspectives, and I would try to call your attention to see how this question of Blue and Health will be moving, because I think it will gain momentum and will be a very important reference for the work connected with the ocean. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance and participation, and thanks a lot for our speakers.